Hey guys, what I thought I would actually talk about today is how often should you train? This is something people ask me all the time, or they might say, no, I shoot quite a bit. I shot 1,000 rounds, last month, and it was only one day during the month that they pulled the trigger 1,000 times. Or maybe they shot 1,000 rounds in a year and they're like, that's a lot for me. So cool. I'm going to kind of break it down. If you can afford just a single box of 50 rounds, just 50 rounds of training ammo one time a month, awesome. That doesn't mean you need to blast all 50 rounds that one day. And I'm going to kind of make a dumb example of this, but think about taking karate when you're a kid. If you took karate when you were 7 and now you're an adult and you get attacked by somebody, you're not going to fall back to the training when you were 7 for that self-defense and use your karate skill to get you out of that situation. So at the end of the day, I talk about being proficient with your tool. It doesn't mean you need to actually shoot a ton of ammo or anything like that. It just means that you need to stay current with it. So if you have 50 rounds, that's plenty of ammo to actually utilize throughout the entire month so that you can go to the range maybe one time a week and only take 10, 15 rounds with you. You don't need a ton of it, and you can practice doing something like your mag changes. You don't need to practice the build drill, which is shooting 6 rounds as fast as you can at a target or anything, simply because ammo is hard to get. So it doesn't make any sense to do that one drill 2 times and be like, well, that's all the ammo I have today. Or just going through, your box of 50 in the first 5 minutes at the gun range. You can really slow it down, work on your fundamentals, and become proficient by running it over and over and over again, and then trying to do that drill with maybe 1 or 2 runs or something like that, but then jump into a different aspect of that training with a couple more rounds, and then try a different drill, and again just keep running it dry. And then when you're good, try running it with the actual ammo going live sometime, so that you can do maybe 3 or 4 different drills with only a few rounds and see how you're going. So an example of that would be like if you're going to shoot at 3 different targets or something, don't put 6 rounds into each target because you're going to run out of ammo pretty quick. But instead, try putting 1 round in each target and then run that drill again and again and again. In the future, when ammo is readily available, sure, go ahead and try engaging 2 rounds or 4 rounds, whatever number it's actually calling for. But ultimately, by doing this, you can get the reps in and you can stay proficient with your firearm, which ultimately is going to leave you in a better position. So when you have to use that tool, that firearm, you're not like, oh crap, I haven't used this or shot this in the past 6 months, or it's been 3 months since I've touched my firearm or anything. You're like, oh yeah, last week, that's when I was familiar with my gun again. And then the following week, you're familiar with your gun again. The next week, you're getting more familiar with that tool all over again. So at the end of that month, when you've trained like 4 times in a month instead of just one day, which you shot all of your ammo in 5 minutes, you're actually going to get something out of that. So I always say just stay proficient by getting out there and making time for it. Now, for most people, going out to a gun range means you have to drive to that location. So if you're going to end up driving someplace, we'll say it takes 15 minutes. Well, that's 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. It's already a half hour out of your life. You need to set up some different drills and stuff. You need to have a little bit of, I'm going to call it like a foundation, or what you actually plan on working on. So you could write it out in a journal or something like that, or a little book, so you have some guidance when you're at that actual range, so that you're not just out there pulling the trigger, but you're truly training just like what you would do for your own physical health and fitness. So ultimately, that's what I say is during the week, come up with a plan of things that you really want to focus on. Then when you get out to the gun range, you have it all wrote out for you, and you can follow that. You can get those reps in. You can shoot some actual rounds once in a while. Keep it a low round count right now, and then as ammo becomes more available, go ahead and amp that training up even more. So getting out to the range 4 times in a month and spending maybe an hour there doing it, again, that's not all the time you had invested in there, because there's a setup time, there's a teardown time, there's your transportation there and back. So it might end up being like a 2-hour session away from your family or doing stuff around the house or something like that. But if you can just give yourself that allotted time, and that might be waking up earlier in the morning while the rest of the family is still sleeping on a weekend, so that you have time to get out to the range and actually do that. It's what I highly recommend that everyone does. Ultimately, the more you touch your gun, the more that you are training perfectly, what you're actually doing is building this confidence with your tool, and you're building that familiarity with your tool. So when you actually have to utilize it in that like high stress situation, it's not taking away from your actual training, because you are more familiar with that tool because of what you do day in, day out with that actual device. So kind of keep that mindset, and just remember, taking karate when you're 7 doesn't mean you're a mixed martial artist or anything. It doesn't mean you can jump into that UFC cage with a professional or anything like that. So if you guys want to start carrying a firearm, I recommend training with that tool all the time. And that could be your dry fire, that could be your live fire, that could be you like searching your own house. It might be watching YouTube videos like this, but at the end of the day, just make sure that while you are watching your favorite show on Netflix, maybe you're doing your magazine changes, not looking at your gun and seeing if you can still find the magazine well every single time. Practice actually loading up magazines. Practice ejecting that magazine. Practice with some dummy rounds inside your magazines to see when you actually load up the magazine, if it's better to use that gross muscle or that fine muscle skill and use the slide release versus pulling back on your slide and just releasing it to load up that first round. And do it over and over again. Practice if you have a safety on that firearm of that first draw. If you actually use your physical safety selector, make sure when you do draw, you're actually taking it off every single time. And again, you can have your gun completely unloaded. You don't need to spend money at all for this style training. But if you can't afford a box of 50 every single month, try to do it. If you can afford and you can find 200 rounds every single month, cool, go ahead and run that. But at the end of the day, the amount that you shoot is truly going to change how proficient you are with that firearm, because you're out there practicing perfect, not just blasting rounds off at a full-size human silhouette and hitting the shoulder every single time, or the shoulder and then, down in the pelvic girdle or something, but trying to hold yourself accountable for these smaller things right now. So when ammo is actually available, you can get out there. Hey guys, I hope that really helped you out, and I hope you enjoy the channel. If you do, make sure you do subscribe. Click the alert button. Make sure you leave a comment down below, whatever it is. It helps us beat that algorithm set here by YouTube and all the social medias. So the more interactive you guys are, it just helps the channel. So I appreciate it. Take care. Get out and train.